Good morning, Liberty. And I'll bid you a happy Thanksgiving as you move into this week. We are going to just kind of jump right into the middle of a well-known event that's recorded for us in the book of Exodus, and just use what's found there to prepare our hearts to move into this week. So I'd like to read from Exodus 32, if I could. When the people saw that Moses delayed to come down from the mountain, the people gathered themselves together to Aaron and said to him, "Up, make us gods who shall go before us. As for this Moses, the man who brought us up out of the land of Egypt, we do not know what has become of him." So Aaron said to them, "Take off the rings of gold that are in the ears of your wives, your sons, your daughters, and bring them to me." So all the people took off the rings of gold that were in their ears and brought them to Aaron. And he received the gold from their hand and fashioned it with a graving tool and made a golden calf. And they said, "These are your gods, O Israel, who brought you up from the land of Egypt." When Aaron saw this, he built an altar before it, and Aaron made a proclamation and said, "Tomorrow shall be a feast to the Lord." And they rose up early the next day and offered burnt offerings and brought peace offerings, and the people sat down to eat and drink and rose up to play. And the Lord said to Moses, "Go down, for your people, whom you brought up out of the land of Egypt, have corrupted themselves. They have turned aside quickly out of the way that I commanded them. They have made for themselves a golden calf and have worshipped it and sacrificed to it and said, 'These are your gods, O Israel, who brought you up from the land of Egypt.' And the Lord said to Moses, 'I have seen this people, and behold, it is a stiff-necked people. And now, therefore, let me alone, that my wrath may burn hot against them, and I may consume them, in order that I may make a great nation of you.' But Moses implored the Lord his God and said, 'O Lord, why does your wrath burn hot against your people, whom you have brought up out of the land of Egypt with your great power and with a mighty hand? Why should the Egyptians say, with evil intent did he bring them out, to kill them in the mountains and consume them from the face of the earth? Turn from your burning anger and relent from this disaster against your people. Remember Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, your servants, to whom you swore by your own self and said to them, 'I will multiply your offspring as the stars of heaven, and all this land that I have promised I will give to your offspring, and they shall inherit it forever.' And the Lord relented from the disaster that he had spoken of bringing on his people." Now, I would want to just provide a little context, if I can. By this point in the storyline, the children of Israel have just met with their God at Mount Sinai. They've seen all the special effects of him appearing to them there, and they've heard the soul-shaking sound of God's voice, and they have agreed to perform all the words they heard. And through a formal ceremony, they have been put under this covenantal arrangement that God has made for them. And Moses has since then gone back up to the mountain to receive lots of additional instruction from God. And now they are in immediate violation of the terms of this covenantal arrangement that they have just made with God, in making this image of an animal that they're now bowing down and worshiping. And it's only through some skillful intercession by Moses that God relents of just wiping them out wholesale. And that's where it gets really interesting, and where I really want to pick it up today in chapter 33, verse 1 through 6. The Lord said to Moses, "Depart, go up from here, you and the people whom you have brought up out of the land of Egypt, to the land which I swore to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, saying, 'To your offspring I will give it.' I will send an angel before you, and I will drive out the Canaanites, the Amorites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites. Go up to a land flowing with milk and honey, but I will not go up among you, lest I consume you on the way, for you are a stiff-necked people. people. And when the people heard this disastrous word, they mourned, and no one put on his ornaments. For the Lord had said to Moses, "Say to the people of Israel, you are a stiff-necked people. If for a single moment I should go up among you, I would consume you. So now take off your ornaments, that I may know what to do with you." And therefore the people of Israel stripped themselves of their ornaments from Mount Horeb onward. And so God's relented, and he's renewing the plan with them to get them into the promised land. But you'll notice that he has now made a slight change to it. He says, "I will not go up among you, lest I consume you on the way, for you are a stiff-necked people." But hear God. He's still promising an abundant life in a land flowing with milk and honey, right? He's still going to prosper them greatly by all that they stand to inherit in this new place. Vineyards they didn't plant, wells they didn't dig, cities they didn't build, fields they didn't cultivate, vats and barns overflowing with plenty. It's just that the one thing they're not getting now is God among them in their midst. He's withdrawing his immediate presence, but they're still getting everything else they could ever want. They're just not getting God now in their midst. And it says, when the people heard this disastrous word, and that, or some translations may seem sad word or bad news. And, I'm just not convinced that everybody around today would hear this as a disastrous word. I mean, think about it. What if God basically promised you a personal life flowing with milk and honey? Bank accounts so big that you needed somebody else to help you manage them. You could drive any car that you can only fantasize about driving right now, and as many of them as you want. You could afford all of the trips you could ever want to take to fun and far-flung places. You could own any and every toy, get your house on the beach, your cabin at the lake, the boat. You'd have a marriage that never loses its spark. It just gets sweeter over time. You raise successful, healthy children who make marriages and do well in life. You get a big gaggle of grandkids in your lap and a long health span to enjoy those grandkids. And you know what? You know that when you die, there's going to be throngs of people that come to your memorial. They're going to rise up. They're going to call you blessed because you made a big impact. You left a legacy. You earned a respectable, reputation in the community. I mean, you would get the personal life flowing with milk and honey. It's just that the only missing ingredient would be God among you. I think there's a lot of people that would probably deal. That doesn't sound so bad. But not Moses. Moses is over on the side, conversing with God and processing what he's just heard, and he's basically telling God, deal breaker. Let's read verse 12. Moses said to the Lord, "See, you say to me, bring up this people, but you have not let me know whom you will send with me. Yet you have said, I know you by name, and you have also found favor in my sight. Now therefore, if I have found favor in your sight, please show me now your ways, that I may know you in order to find favor in your sight. And consider too that this nation is your people." And he said, "My presence will go with you, and I will give you rest." And he said to him, "If your presence will not go with me, do not bring us up from here. For how shall it be known that I have found favor in your sight, I and your people? Is it not in your going with us, so that we are distinct, I and your people, from every other people on the face of the earth? You know, Moses sees this for the actual catastrophe that this really is. And he doesn't want to settle for anything less than God's presence among them. God doing what God had committed to do, and that is putting himself right in the middle of their camp. And what I like is that Moses explains why. Look more closely at verse 16. He says, how shall it be known that I have found favor in your sight, I and your people? Is it not in your going with us, so that we are distinct, I and your people, from every other people on the face of this earth? And that's his reason. He says, God, that's our distinctive. You among us, that's our distinctive. That's what makes us a blessedly different people, set apart from all the other peoples in this world. It's not a land flowing with milk and honey. It's God among us. That's the glorious difference maker in our lives. That's our advantage in this world, is the covenantal companionship that we have with our Creator. It's the fellowship of his love living among us and living with us. And if we don't have that, Moses is like, how are we any different? And how are we any better off than anybody else? I mean, yeah, we may have a few more toys than the next guy. Maybe. Maybe we might have a little bit of a shinier looking life than our neighbor. Maybe. But at the end of the day, we are still named by this world. We are still claimed by this world. We still share the same fate as this world. And Moses, he just sees right through it. God, you have just hollowed the whole thing out. If you remove yourself, you have removed the best thing that we have going for ourselves. That actually makes us a blessed people above every other people on the face of the earth. And it's the actual proof, Moses said, that we have found God's grace that gives us this special belonging with him. See, Moses doesn't want to be blessed if Moses can't belong. I think there's a lot of people today that want to be blessed by God, but don't necessarily want to belong to God. And you know what I like is God agrees. God agrees with Moses' reasons. Verse 17, and the Lord said to Moses, this very thing that you have spoken, I will do, for you have found favor in my sight, and I know you by name. And God listens, and God promises his presence. You know, this Thanksgiving, as in many Thanksgivings, it's just a time. It's a traditional time where we reflect on all the good gifts that the Almighty Giver of gifts stacks into our lives. It's a time to number our blessings and to return thanks to him for the many good things he stacks into our lives. But I chose this passage because there's one gift that puts all the other gifts into perspective. The greatest gift that God could ever give is the gift of himself. His presence in our lives. And he gave us that gift when he gave us Jesus, who is Emmanuel, God with us.